Spanish. Spanish, or Español, is the most widely spoken Romance language, originating from Castile in central Spain. It spread across the world during Spain's colonial expansion, becoming the dominant language in most of Latin America and a major global language today. Its grammar and phonetics are relatively straightforward, which helped it spread easily. Spanish vocabulary stems mainly from Latin, but absorbed Arabic influences from centuries of Moorish rule, as seen in words like almohada and azúcar. With rich literary traditions, from Cervantes' Don Quixote to modern Latin American writers, Spanish is a cultural powerhouse. It's also the second most studied language in the world, essential in business, politics, and global communication. French or Francais, is spoken by about 300 million people across the world. Originating from the Latin spoken in Gaul, it developed under strong influence from the Franks, a Germanic tribe whose name it bears. Over centuries, French evolved into the language of diplomacy, culture, and art, spreading globally through France's colonial empire. Today, it remains an official language in more than 25 countries across Europe, Africa, and the Americas, as well as major international organizations like the UN and EU. French is renowned for its nasal vowels, precise grammar, and refined vocabulary. Its cultural influence endures through philosophy, cuisine, fashion, and literature, from Voltaire and Hugo to modern cinema and global francophone music. Portuguese. Portuguese, or Portuguese, is spoken by about 260 million people worldwide. It began in the northwest of the Iberian Peninsula, evolving from medieval Galician Portuguese, before spreading across the globe during Portugal's Age of Exploration. Today, it's the official language of 9 countries, including Portugal, Brazil, Angola, and Mozambique, as well as regions in Asia like Goa and Macau. The language's poetic rhythm and expressive sound have made it a cornerstone of global literature and music. From Luis de Camões' epic Os Lusíadas to the haunting verses of Fernando Pessoa, Portuguese carries a deep cultural legacy. It remains one of the most influential and fastest-growing Romance languages in the modern world. Italian. Italian, or Italiano, is spoken by about 85 million people worldwide. It evolved from the Tuscan dialects of medieval Italy, most notably the variety used by Dante Alighieri in the Divine Comedy, which helped standardize the language. Italian is celebrated for its musical rhythm, clear vowels, and expressive intonation, qualities that make it a favorite in opera and the arts. Beyond Italy, it's spoken in parts of Switzerland, San Marino, and by large diaspora communities in the Americas and Australia. Deeply tied to culture, art, and history, Italian carries the legacy of the Renaissance, shaping modern science, design, and cuisine. It's often seen as one of the most beautiful and culturally rich Romance languages. Romanian. Romanian, or Romana, is spoken by about 30 million people, primarily in Romania and Moldova. It is the only major Romance language of Eastern Europe and the one that has preserved the most features of classical Latin. Isolated from its Western counterparts by Slavic and Balkan languages, Romanian developed a unique mix of Latin roots and Slavic, Greek, Turkish, and Hungarian influences. Despite this blend, its core grammar and vocabulary remain distinctly Latin, making it an invaluable linguistic link to Rome's eastern provinces. Romanian's sound is rich and slightly exotic to Western ears, with its use of vowel harmony and distinctive rhythm. The language reflects centuries of cultural resilience and a deep sense of identity. Catalan. Catalan, or Català, is spoken by about 9 million people, primarily in Catalonia, Valencia, the Balearic Islands, Andorra, and parts of southern France and Sardinia. It developed from Vulgar Latin around the Eastern Pyrenees and shares traits with both Spanish and Occitan, while maintaining a grammar and sound system uniquely its own. Catalan has a strong literary heritage dating back to the Middle Ages, with early works like Tyrant Lo Blanche influencing European literature. Today, it's a symbol of regional pride and cultural independence, especially in Catalonia, where it serves as a co-official language alongside Spanish. Catalan's revival and promotion highlight the enduring strength of linguistic and cultural identity in the modern world. Neapolitan. Neapolitan, or Napolitano, is spoken by about 8 million people, primarily in southern Italy, centered around Naples and the Campania region. It evolved from Latin with strong influences from Greek, Occitan, and later Spanish and French, due to centuries of cultural exchange and conquest. Though often considered a dialect of Italian, Neapolitan is linguistically distinct, with its own grammar, vocabulary, and rich oral tradition. It has a deep cultural presence in music, theater, and poetry, most famously in classic Neapolitan songs like O Sole Mio and Funiculi Funicula. Neapolitan captures the warmth, emotion, and expressiveness of southern Italy, representing a vibrant linguistic and cultural identity that continues to thrive in everyday life. Sicilian. Sicilian, or Siciliano, is spoken by about 5 million people on the island of Sicily and parts of southern Italy. It developed from Latin, but absorbed influences from Greek, Arabic, Norman French, and Spanish, due to the island's history of conquests and cultural exchange. Sicilian is distinct from Standard Italian, with its own phonetics, vocabulary, and grammar. It has a literary tradition dating back to the 13th century, with the Sicilian school of poetry, which helped shape early Italian literature. Today, Sicilian remains a marker of regional identity, used in music, film, and daily conversation as an expression of the island's blended linguistic and cultural past. Venetian. Venetian, or Veneto, is spoken by about 4 million people, mainly in the Veneto region of northern Italy and among communities abroad. It developed from Latin in the territories of the former Venetian Republic, which once controlled trade routes across the Mediterranean. Venetian differs from Standard Italian in pronunciation, grammar, and vocabulary, showing influences from Greek, Slavic, and Germanic languages through centuries of contact. It was historically used in administration, literature, and theater, including the works of playwright Carlo Goldoni. Though often labeled a dialect, Venetian functions as a separate language within the Romance family. It continues to be used in local media, folk traditions, and cultural life throughout northeastern Italy. Galician. Galician, or Gallego, is spoken by about 2 million people in the region of Galicia in northwestern Spain. It developed from the medieval Galician Portuguese language, which once covered both modern Galicia and northern Portugal. Over time, political separation led to the formation of two distinct languages, Portuguese and Galician. Galician retains many Latin roots and shares much of its grammar and vocabulary with Portuguese, making the two largely mutually intelligible. It has a strong literary tradition that dates back to the Middle Ages and experienced a revival in the 19th century known as the Rexurdimento. Today, Galician is co-official with Spanish in Galicia and remains central to regional education, culture, and identity. Occitan. Occitan, or Lenga de Si, is spoken by about 2 million people, mainly in southern France, with smaller communities in Italy and Spain. It developed from the Latin spoken in the region, once known as Occitania, and was historically used by the medieval troubadours, whose poetry influenced much of European literature. Occitan includes several dialects such as Provençal, Gascon, and Languedocian, which vary across regions but remain mutually intelligible. Although French replaced it as the dominant national language, Occitan continues to be taught, written, and spoken in local communities. It represents a distinct linguistic and cultural tradition that connects southern France's past with ongoing efforts to preserve regional languages in modern Europe. Sardinian. Sardinian, or Sardu, is spoken by about 1 million people on the island of Sardinia, Italy. It is often regarded as the Romance language that remains closest to classical Latin in both vocabulary and structure. Over centuries, it absorbed some elements from Catalan, Spanish, and Italian, reflecting Sardinia's varied rulers, yet it has preserved many ancient Latin features lost elsewhere. Sardinian includes several regional varieties, such as Logudorese and Campidanese, which differ slightly but share the same linguistic base. Although Italian dominates public life, Sardinian remains a strong marker of local identity. Efforts continue to promote its use in education and media as a vital link to the island's cultural and linguistic heritage. Corsican, Corsican, or Corsu, is spoken by about 150,000 people on the island of Corsica, which belongs to France. It developed from the Tuscan dialects of medieval Italy, making it closely related to Italian, especially the variety spoken in Tuscany. Over time, Corsican absorbed some French influence but has largely maintained its Italianate sound and structure. The language varies slightly across regions, with northern and southern forms showing minor differences. Once the island's main spoken language, Corsican was gradually replaced by French in official and educational settings. Today, there are active movements to preserve and revive it through schools, literature, and music as a key part of Corsican cultural identity. Ladino. Ladino, or Judeo-Espanol, is spoken by about 60,000 to 100,000 people, mainly in Israel, Turkey, and the Balkans. It developed from Old Spanish after the expulsion of Jews from Spain in 1492, when Sephardic communities preserved the medieval Castilian they carried with them. Over centuries, Ladino absorbed words from Hebrew, Turkish, Greek, and French, while keeping much of its 15th century Spanish grammar and pronunciation. It was once a major language of Sephardic Jewish life, used in newspapers, songs, and prayers. Although its use declined in the 20th century, recent efforts to revive and document Ladino have grown, with online courses, cultural programs, and literature helping to preserve this link to Spain's Jewish heritage. Romansh. Romansh, or Romansh, is spoken by about 50,000 people in the canton of Graubünden in southeastern Switzerland. It descends from the Latin spoken by Roman soldiers and settlers who mixed with local Alpine tribes. Over time, isolation in mountain valleys produced several dialects, such as Sursilvan and Valader, each with slight grammatical and lexical differences. Romansh has official status in Switzerland alongside German, French, and Italian. though it is mainly used in regional administration, education, and local media. Despite its small number of speakers, Romansh remains a symbol of Swiss multilingualism and cultural diversity. Preservation efforts continue through radio, literature, and education to ensure the survival of this ancient Romance language.